Keanu Reeves sat in a quiet corner of his Los Angeles home, the soft glow of the afternoon sun streaming through the windows. At 60, he had lived a life filled with highs and lows, triumphs and heartbreaks. Known to millions as an action hero, a philosopher, and even a symbol of kindness in Hollywood, Keanu was more than just the characters he played on screen. He was a man who carried stories within him, stories that few people knew about. One of those stories involved Sandra Bullock, the woman who had once been much more than just his co-star. For years, fans speculated about their relationship, wondering if there was something deeper between them. Now, in a rare moment of openness, Keanu decided to share what really happened, or rather, what didn't happen. It all started decades ago when Keanu first met Sandra on the set of Speed. She walked onto the scene like a burst of energy, her laughter echoing across the production lot. Sandra was sharp, funny, and full of warmth, while Keanu was reserved, thoughtful, and often lost in his own world. Despite their differences, they clicked almost instantly. From the very beginning, there was an undeniable chemistry between them. It wasn't just how well they worked together on camera. It was the way they connected off-screen too. During breaks, they would sit together, talking about everything from movies to music to their dreams for the future. Friends on set noticed how comfortable they seemed around each other, how natural their conversations flowed. But neither of them made a move beyond friendship. At the time, both were focused on building their careers. Keanu was still finding his footing in Hollywood after starring in films like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and Point Break. Sandra, on the other hand, was transitioning from TV roles to becoming a leading lady in big-budget blockbusters. They were two rising stars navigating the unpredictable waters of fame, and perhaps neither wanted to rock the boat by complicating things with romance. Instead, they chose to keep things simple, cherishing the bond they shared without labeling it as anything more. To outsiders, they looked like the perfect pair, but inside, doubts lingered. For Keanu, part of the hesitation came from his own insecurities. Even back then, he was known for being private, someone who kept his emotions tucked away where no one could see them. He admired Sandra deeply, her talent, her humor, her ability to light up any room she entered, but he also felt unworthy of her. In his mind, he was just a guy trying to figure out his place in the world. And Sandra? She was extraordinary. How could he possibly measure up? These thoughts swirled in his head constantly, holding him back from taking a step forward. Meanwhile, Sandra seemed completely at ease with him, treating him like the kindred spirit he was. She never pressured him or hinted at wanting more. Instead, she embraced their friendship fully, unaware of the internal battle raging inside him. Filming for Speed progressed. Their connection grew stronger. Long days on set turned into late-night dinners, where they would talk for hours about anything and everything. Keanu found himself looking forward to these moments, craving the simplicity and joy Sandra brought into his life. For someone who spent so much time alone, these interactions felt like a lifeline. Yet every time he considered telling her how he truly felt, fear stopped him. What if she didn't feel the same way? What if confessing his feelings ruined the beautiful friendship they had built? The uncertainty paralyzed him, leaving him stuck in a cycle of longing and self-doubt. Years later, looking back on that period, Keanu realized how much he had let slip through his fingers. He understood now that love wasn't always about grand gestures or perfect timing. It was about taking chances, even when you weren't sure of the outcome. But back then, he wasn't ready to take that leap. Life had already thrown its share of challenges his way, and he wasn't sure he could handle another disappointment. Little did he know, fate had other plans in store for him and for Sandra too. Their journey together was far from over, though it wouldn't unfold in the way either of them expected. Even as their careers took different paths after Speed, Keanu and Sandra stayed in touch. They would meet occasionally at events or exchange messages whenever life got overwhelming. Over time, their bond deepened, evolving into something rare and precious, a friendship built on trust, respect, and mutual admiration. To Keanu, Sandra became a source of comfort during some of the darkest chapters of his life. When tragedy struck again and again, she was the one person he could count on to listen without judgment. And yet, despite their closeness, the question of what if continued to linger in the background, unanswered but never forgotten. Life has a way of testing people, and for Keanu Reeves, the years following Speed were filled with trials that would shape him in profound ways. Just as his career was taking off, personal losses began to pile up, one after another. First, his best friend River Phoenix passed away tragically outside a nightclub. The news hit Keanu hard. River wasn't just a colleague, but someone he considered family. Then came the devastating loss of his sister Kim, who succumbed to cancer after a long and painful battle. And as if that wasn't enough, Keanu's newborn daughter Ava died shortly after birth, leaving behind an emptiness no words could fill. These tragedies left scars on his heart, shaping him into the introspective man fans admired today. Through it all, Sandra Bullock remained a steady presence in his life. She didn't try to fix him or offer empty platitudes. She simply showed up when he needed her most. Whether it was sending him handwritten letters during tough times or inviting him over for dinner when he felt like isolating himself, Sandra made sure Keanu knew he wasn't alone. Her kindness meant everything to him, especially when grief threatened to swallow him whole. Yet even as he leaned on her for support, Keanu couldn't shake the feeling that he was dragging her down. He believed his pain was too heavy for anyone else to bear, let alone someone as bright and full of life as Sandra. So he kept her at arm's length emotionally, afraid of burdening her with his sorrow. Sandra, however, was dealing with her own struggles. While Keanu battled inner demons, she faced challenges of her own in both her personal and professional life. After their time together on Speed, Sandra became one of Hollywood's biggest stars, starring in hits like Miss Congeniality and The Blind Side. But fame came with its own set of problems. Her romantic relationships often ended in heartbreak, and she found herself questioning whether true love existed for her outside of movies. Still, whenever things got rough, Keanu was there for her. They would talk late into the night, sharing stories about their lives and offering each other advice. Their conversations were honest and raw, free from judgment or pretense. In those moments, they weren't celebrities, they were two people trying to navigate the complexities of life. Despite their deep connection, neither Keanu nor Sandra ever crossed the line from friendship into romance. There were moments when the thought lingered in the air, unspoken yet palpable. During quiet dinners or long drives, they would catch each other's gaze and hold it just a little longer than necessary. But every time the opportunity arose to say something, fear held them back. For Keanu, it was the weight of his past losses that stopped him. He convinced himself that loving someone meant risking losing them too, and he couldn't bear the thought of causing Sandra pain. As for Sandra, she respected Keanu's boundaries, sensing that he wasn't ready to open up completely. Though she cared deeply for him, she refused to push him into anything he wasn't prepared for. Their dynamic created a unique kind of tension, one that only they understood. To outsiders, they seemed like the perfect couple, destined to end up together. But inside, they were caught in a delicate dance, moving closer and then pulling away, always circling around what might have been. Over coffee or phone calls, they talked about everything except the one thing that mattered most: their feelings for each other. Sandra once hinted at her emotions in an interview years later, admitting that she had fallen for Keanu during their Speed days. "He's extraordinary," she said softly, her voice tinged with nostalgia. But she quickly added that she never acted on those feelings out of respect for their friendship. It was clear that she valued their bond too much to risk ruining it. As the years went by, Keanu began to realize how much he relied on Sandra's presence in his life. She was his anchor, the person who grounded him when the world felt chaotic. He admired her strength, her resilience, and the way she radiated warmth wherever she went. But admiration wasn't enough. He wanted more. Yet every time he thought about confessing his feelings, doubt crept in. What if she didn't feel the same way anymore? What if telling her the truth changed everything between them? The fear of losing her altogether kept him silent, locked in a cycle of longing and regret. Looking back, Keanu saw how his hesitation had shaped their relationship. By choosing not to act on his feelings, he preserved their friendship, but sacrificed the chance at something deeper. It wasn't until he reached his 60s that he fully understood the cost of that decision. In interviews, he spoke candidly about his regrets, acknowledging that Sandra had been the love of his life. "I think I loved her then, and I know I love her now," he admitted, his voice tinged with emotion. "But I let fear dictate my choices." His words resonated with listeners, many of whom recognized themselves in his story, a reminder that sometimes the greatest loves are the ones we leave unspoken. Even so, Keanu cherished the bond they still shared. Though they never married or became romantically involved, their connection remained as strong as ever. They continued to celebrate each other's successes, offering encouragement during difficult times. Sandra was there for Keanu when he starred in John Wick, cheering him on from the sidelines. And Keanu supported Sandra through her Oscar win for The Blind Side, applauding her talent and determination. Their friendship was proof that love doesn't always need labels. It can exist in countless forms, enriching lives in ways that go beyond traditional definitions. Though Keanu often wondered what might have been, he took comfort in knowing that Sandra would always be part of his life. Their story wasn't one of missed opportunities or unfulfilled dreams. It was about finding beauty in the present moment. It was about cherishing the connection they had, imperfect as it may be, and recognizing its value. As Keanu reflected on his journey, he realized that love isn't always about grand gestures or fairy tale endings. Sometimes it's about showing up, staying true, and holding on to the people who matter most, even if it means loving them from afar. As Keanu Reeves entered his 50s, life began to settle into a rhythm that felt both familiar and comforting. The chaos of his younger years, the whirlwind of fame, the relentless scrutiny, the personal tragedies, had given way to a quieter existence. He spent more time reflecting on his past, piecing together the fragments of his journey like a puzzle slowly coming together. And no matter how hard he tried to focus on other parts of his life, Sandra Bullock's presence lingered in his thoughts. She wasn't just a memory, she was a constant, a thread woven into the fabric of his story. Even after all these years, their bond remained unchanged, as strong as ever. Keanu often found himself wondering what Sandra was doing at any given moment. Was she laughing with friends, working late on set, or maybe sitting quietly somewhere, lost in her own world? He liked to imagine her happy, thriving, living the beautiful life she deserved. Yet there were times when he couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. He thought about the roads they could have taken together, the shared milestones they might have celebrated. What would it have been like to wake up next to her every morning, to build a home filled with laughter and love? These questions haunted him, not because he wanted to change the past, but because they reminded him of what he had let slip away. Sandra, too, carried pieces of Keanu with her wherever she went. Though she rarely spoke about their relationship publicly, those close to her knew how much he meant to her. Friends noticed how her face lit up whenever his name came up in conversation. She spoke of him with admiration, calling him one of the kindest, most genuine people she had ever met. To Sandra, Keanu wasn't just a friend, he was family. And while she understood why things hadn't worked out between them romantically, she still cherished the connection they shared. It was rare to find someone who truly saw you for who you were, flaws and all, and accepted you without condition. For Sandra, Keanu was that person. Their friendship evolved over time, adapting to the demands of their busy lives. They didn't see each other as often as they used to, but when they did, it was as if no time had passed at all. A simple text message or phone call was enough to bridge the distance between them. During holidays or special occasions, they made an effort to meet up, sharing meals and catching up on each other's lives. These moments were precious to Keanu, reminding him of the joy Sandra brought into his world. She had a way of making everything feel lighter, easier, even when life seemed overwhelming. Her optimism was infectious, her humor unmatched. Around her, Keanu felt like the best version of himself. Still, there were reminders of what could have. been. When Keanu attended award shows or industry events, he couldn't help but glance around the room, searching for Sandra in the crowd. If she happened to be there, their eyes would meet briefly before they exchanged polite smiles. But behind those smiles lay unspoken words, memories of moments they had shared long ago. Once, at a charity gala, they ended up seated next to each other. As they chatted throughout the evening, it felt like old times, as though the years apart had melted away. By the end of the night, Keanu realized something. Despite everything, Sandra still held a piece of his heart, and he suspected that he held a piece of hers too. In interviews during this period of his life, Keanu began opening up more about his feelings. He talked about the importance of friendship, the value of having someone who understands you completely. When asked about Sandra specifically, he didn't shy away from expressing his admiration for her. "She's extraordinary," he said, repeating the same words he had used years earlier. This time, however, his tone carried a deeper weight, as if he finally understood the magnitude of what he had missed. He admitted that not pursuing a romantic relationship with her was one of his biggest regrets. "I think I loved her then, and I know I love her now," he confessed, his voice soft and vulnerable. "But I let fear get in the way." The confession struck a chord with fans around the world. Many saw themselves in Keanu's story, a tale of love lost not because of malice or indifference, but because of hesitation and self-doubt. People admired his honesty, his willingness to confront his emotions head-on. For someone known for keeping his private life under wraps, this level of openness was unexpected, yet deeply appreciated. It humanized him, showing that even celebrities experience the same struggles and insecurities as everyone else. Keanu's words resonated because they were universal. We all have moments in our lives where we wonder, what if? Where we replay decisions and wonder how things might have turned out differently. Despite the regret, Keanu refused to dwell on negativity. Instead, he chose to focus on gratitude for the friendship he still had with Sandra, for the lessons he had learned along the way. He realized that love doesn't always follow a straight path. Sometimes it takes detours, leading us to places we never anticipated. In his case, love manifested not as a romantic partnership, but as an enduring bond built on trust, respect, and mutual support. That realization brought him peace, helping him come to terms with the choices he had made, or rather, the ones he hadn't made. Even as he embraced this perspective, Keanu couldn't help but wonder about the future. Would he and Sandra ever cross paths again in a way that allowed them to explore the depth of their feelings? Could they revisit the what-ifs that had lingered between them for so long? He didn't know the answers to these questions, and perhaps that uncertainty was part of the beauty of it. Life, after all, is unpredictable. It has its own plans, its own timing. All Keanu could do was remain open to whatever came next, trusting that their connection would endure regardless of form. For now, he took solace in the present moment. He continued to celebrate Sandra's achievements, cheering her on from afar. Whether it was congratulating her on a new film or simply sending her a thoughtful note, Keanu made sure she knew how much she meant to him. And Sandra, in turn, reciprocated the sentiment, offering encouragement and kindness whenever he needed it. Their relationship may not have followed the traditional script of love stories, but it was real, meaningful, and enduring. In a world where fleeting connections often overshadow lasting ones, their bond stood as a testament to the power of unconditional love. As Keanu sat alone in his home one evening, reflecting on his journey, he smiled softly to himself. He thought about Sandra, about the laughter they had shared, the quiet moments they had treasured. Though their story hadn't unfolded the way he once dreamed it might, he was grateful for every chapter they had written together. Love, he realized, isn't confined to romance or marriage. It exists in countless forms, enriching lives in ways that defy definition. And for Keanu, loving Sandra, whether as a friend, a confidant, or something more, was enough. As Keanu Reeves grew older, he started to notice subtle changes in the way he viewed life. The sharp edges of regret that once weighed heavily on his heart began to soften, replaced by a sense of acceptance. He realized that while he couldn't change the past, he could choose how he carried it with him into the future. This newfound perspective allowed him to reflect on his relationship with Sandra Bullock without bitterness or sorrow. Instead, he saw their story as something beautiful, a testament to the enduring power of connection, even when it didn't follow the path most people expected. One of the things Keanu admired most about Sandra was her ability to live fully in the present moment. She wasn't someone who dwelled on what might have been. She focused on what was right in front of her. Whether it was throwing herself into her work, spending time with loved ones, or simply enjoying a quiet afternoon at home, Sandra approached life with a kind of grace that inspired those around her. Keanu often thought about this quality, wondering if he could adopt some of it for himself. He had spent so much of his life looking backward, replaying decisions and imagining alternate outcomes. But Sandra reminded him that life happens now, not in the what-ifs of yesterday. Their conversations over the years became less frequent but no less meaningful. When they did speak, whether through phone calls or occasional meetings, they picked up exactly where they had left off. There was never any awkwardness between them, just an easy familiarity that came from knowing each other so deeply. They talked about everything: movies, books, music, and sometimes even their personal struggles, but always avoided revisiting old wounds. Both understood that reopening those topics would only stir emotions better left untouched. So they kept their exchanges light, filled with laughter and shared memories, cherishing the simplicity of their bond. Still, there were moments when the weight of unspoken feelings pressed against Keanu's chest, making it hard to breathe. Late at night, when the world was quiet and his thoughts turned inward, he found himself thinking about Sandra more than usual. He imagined what it might feel like to hold her hand again, to tell her everything he had kept bottled up inside for so long. Would she understand? Would she forgive him for waiting too long? These questions swirled in his mind, keeping him awake until the early hours of the morning. Yet every time he considered reaching out, fear held him back. What if saying the words aloud changed everything? What if it ruined the delicate balance they had worked so hard to maintain? Sandra, for her part, seemed content with the way things were. She had built a fulfilling life for herself, balancing her career with her role as a mother to her adopted son, Louis. Her days were filled with purpose, and she radiated happiness whenever Keanu saw her. He couldn't help but feel proud of the woman she had become, a strong, independent spirit who faced challenges with courage and grace. At the same time, he wondered if she ever thought about him the way he thought about her. Did she lie awake at night, wondering what might have been? Or had she moved on completely, leaving their shared history behind? Despite the lingering questions, Keanu took comfort in knowing that Sandra valued their friendship as much as he did. Whenever they met, she greeted him with warmth and affection, treating him like the cherished friend he was. Their interactions were effortless, free from tension or awkwardness. Once, during a casual lunch in Los Angeles, Sandra teased him about his motorcycle obsession, joking that he needed to find a hobby that didn't involve risking his life. Keanu laughed along with her, feeling a sense of ease he rarely experienced with anyone else. In those moments, it was easy to forget the complexities of their past and simply enjoy being together. Over time, Keanu began to see their relationship as a gift rather than a missed opportunity. Yes, they hadn't ended up together romantically, but their connection had stood the test of time in ways few relationships did. Many couples drifted apart after breakups or unrequited love, but Keanu and Sandra had managed to preserve something rare and precious. Their bond was proof that love doesn't have to fit neatly into societal expectations. It can exist in countless forms, enriching lives in unexpected ways. For Keanu, this realization brought a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. In interviews, he continued to speak openly about Sandra, acknowledging her impact on his life without hesitation. He described her as one of the most important people in his world, someone who had shaped him in ways he couldn't fully articulate. "She's extraordinary," he said repeatedly, his voice tinged with emotion. It was clear that his admiration for her went beyond mere friendship. It bordered on reverence. Fans noticed this too, drawn to the sincerity in his words and the depth of his feelings. His vulnerability resonated with audiences, reminding them that even the toughest exteriors hide tender hearts. Though Keanu accepted that he and Sandra would likely never be more than friends, he refused to let regret overshadow the beauty of what they had. He chose instead to focus on gratitude for the laughter they had shared, the support they had given each other, and the unwavering loyalty that defined their bond. Love, he realized, isn't always about grand gestures or fairy tale endings. Sometimes it's about showing up consistently, staying true through life's ups and downs, and holding on to the people who matter most, even if it means loving them from afar. As Keanu entered his 60s, he made a conscious effort to embrace the present moment just as Sandra had taught him. He threw himself into his passions, acting, motorcycles, music, and surrounded himself with people who brought joy into his life. He also stayed connected with Sandra, sending her thoughtful messages or checking in whenever he knew she was going through a tough time. Though their lives were busy and often pulled them in different directions, they remained anchors for each other, steadfast and reliable. Their friendship was a reminder that love doesn't fade. It evolves, taking on new shapes and meanings as time passes. Looking ahead, Keanu didn't know what the future held for him and Sandra. Perhaps they would continue down the same path they had walked for decades, cherishing their connection without complicating it further. Or maybe fate had something else in store, giving them another chance to explore the depths of their feelings. Whatever happened, Keanu trusted that their bond would endure. After all, true love isn't bound by labels or timelines. It exists in the spaces between words, in the quiet understanding that transcends explanation. And for Keanu, loving Sandra, whether as a friend, a confidant, or something more, was enough. Keanu Reeves had always been a man who appreciated the quiet moments in life. At 60, he found himself seeking them out more often, finding solace in the stillness that surrounded him. These moments gave him time to think, to reflect on the choices he had made and the relationships that had shaped him. Sandra Bullock was never far from his thoughts during these reflections. Her name would drift into his mind like a familiar melody, bringing with it a mix of emotions: gratitude, longing, and a deep sense of admiration. Though their paths hadn't crossed romantically, Keanu couldn't deny the profound impact she had on his life. One afternoon, as he sat in his favorite chair, with a cup of tea in hand, Keanu allowed himself to imagine what might have happened if things had gone differently. What if he had taken a chance all those years ago? Would they have built a life together, filled with laughter and shared dreams? He pictured mornings spent side by side, evenings talking about their days, and holidays surrounded by family and friends. The image was vivid, almost tangible, but it existed only in his mind. A dream that could never come true. Yet instead, of feeling sadness, Keanu felt a strange sense of contentment. Imagining those scenarios didn't leave him yearning for what wasn't. Instead, it reminded him of how much Sandra had already given him, a friendship that was rare and precious. Sandra, too, carried memories of Keanu with her wherever she went. Though she rarely spoke publicly about their relationship, those close to her knew how much he meant to her. She admired his kindness, his humility, and the way he approached life with such sincerity. To Sandra, Keanu wasn't just a friend, he was someone who understood her in ways few others did. Their bond transcended words, existing in the spaces between conversations and lingering smiles. Even after years apart, she still felt a warmth whenever she thought about him, a reminder of the connection they shared. Their interactions remained consistent over the years, even as their lives took different directions. They would occasionally meet at events or exchange messages when life got overwhelming. These exchanges were brief but meaningful, filled with updates about their careers, families, and personal milestones. Once, when Sandra's son Louis started school, Keanu sent her a heartfelt note congratulating her on this new chapter. "You're an amazing mom," he wrote, his words simple yet deeply genuine. Sandra smiled as she read the message, touched by his thoughtfulness. It was moments like these that reinforced the strength of their bond, proving that love doesn't need grand displays to be real. Despite the distance between them, Keanu and Sandra continued to celebrate each other's successes. When Sandra won accolades for her performances or took on exciting new projects, Keanu was one of the first to congratulate her. Similarly, Sandra cheered him on during the release of John Wick and other films, praising his dedication and talent. They supported each other not out of obligation but because they genuinely cared. This mutual respect and encouragement became a cornerstone of their friendship, grounding them through life's ups and downs. As Keanu reflected on their relationship, he realized that love isn't always about being together. It's about showing up in whatever way you can. For years, he had convinced himself that staying apart was the right choice, fearing that his pain and grief would overshadow any potential happiness they might find together. But now, looking back, he saw that his fears had been misplaced. Love isn't diminished by hardship, it's strengthened by it. If anything, his struggles could have brought them closer, creating a partnership rooted in understanding and resilience. This realization didn't fill him with regret. Instead, it gave him clarity. He understood now that love is fluid, evolving, with time and circumstance, and their connection had done just that. In interviews, Keanu began speaking more openly about Sandra, sharing glimpses of their bond with the world. He described her as a source of light in his darkest moments, someone who had stood by him without judgment or expectation. "She's extraordinary," he said, repeating the phrase that had become synonymous with his feelings for her. His words resonated with fans, many of whom saw echoes of their own experiences in his story. People admired his honesty, his willingness to confront emotions that are often left unspoken. In doing so, he humanized himself, reminding everyone that love isn't perfect. It's messy, complicated, and beautiful in its imperfection. Though Keanu accepted that he and Sandra would likely remain friends, he refused to let regret overshadow the beauty of what they had. Instead, he chose to focus on gratitude for the laughter they had shared, the support they had given each other, and the unwavering loyalty that defined their bond. Love, he realized, isn't confined to romance or marriage. It exists in countless forms, enriching lives in ways that defy definition. For Keanu, loving Sandra, whether as a friend, a confidant, or something more, was enough. As he moved forward into the next chapter of his life, Keanu embraced the lessons he had learned from his relationship with Sandra. He understood the importance of vulnerability, of letting people in even when it feels risky. He also recognized the value of friendship, of nurturing connections that stand the test of time. Sandra had taught him these things not through words, but through actions, showing him what it means to love selflessly and unconditionally. Looking ahead, Keanu didn't know what the future held for him and Sandra. Perhaps they would continue walking the same path they had traveled for decades, cherishing their connection without complicating it further. Or maybe fate had something else in store, giving them another chance to explore the depths of their feelings. Whatever happened, Keanu trusted that their bond would endure. After all, true love isn't bound by labels or timelines. It exists in the spaces between words, in the quiet understanding that transcends explanation. And for Keanu, loving Sandra, whether as a friend, a confidant, or something more, was enough. Keanu Reeves sat on the porch of his home one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was painted in hues of orange and pink, a gentle reminder of how fleeting yet beautiful life could be. At 60, he had learned to appreciate these small moments, the quiet rustle of leaves, the distant hum of the city, the way time seemed to pause just long enough for him to catch his breath. As he sipped his tea, his thoughts drifted back to Sandra Bullock, as they often did. Their story wasn't one of fairy tale endings or dramatic declarations, but it was deeply meaningful nonetheless. It was a story about connection, resilience, and the enduring power of love in all its forms. In recent years, Keanu had come to terms with the choices he had made, or rather, the ones he hadn't made. He no longer saw his hesitation as a failure, but as part of who he was at that time in his life. Back then, fear had dictated his actions, convincing him that staying apart was the best way to protect both himself and Sandra. Now looking back, he understood that love isn't about avoiding pain. It's about embracing vulnerability and trusting that two people can navigate challenges together. Though he regretted not taking a chance on their relationship, he didn't let that regret define him. Instead, he chose to focus on the beauty of what they still shared, a friendship that had weathered decades, distance, and countless changes. Sandra, too, had grown over the years. She had built a fulfilling life for herself, balancing her career with motherhood and finding joy in the everyday moments. Her son, Louis, had become her greatest source of happiness, filling her days with laughter and purpose. Yet, even as she embraced this new chapter of her life, Keanu remained a constant presence. Whether it was through occasional phone calls, text messages, or brief encounters at events, their bond continued to thrive. Sandra admired Keanu's kindness and humility, qualities that had drawn her to him in the first place. To her, he wasn't just a friend. He was someone who truly understood her, flaws and all. Their interactions were simple, yet profound. When they met, there was never any awkwardness, only an ease that came from knowing each other so deeply. They would talk about everything: movies, books, music, and sometimes even their personal struggles, but always avoided revisiting old wounds. Both understood that reopening those topics would only stir emotions better, left untouched. So they kept their exchanges light, filled with laughter and shared memories, cherishing the simplicity of their bond. Once, during a casual dinner in Los Angeles, Sandra joked about Keanu's obsession with motorcycles, teasing him about finding a safer hobby. Keanu laughed along with her, feeling a sense of ease he rarely experienced with anyone else. In those moments, it was easy to forget the complexities of their past and simply enjoy being together. Despite the lingering questions about what might have been, Keanu took comfort in knowing that Sandra valued their friendship as much as he did. Whenever they met, she greeted him with warmth and affection, treating him like the cherished friend he was. Their connection was proof that love doesn't fade. It evolves, taking on new shapes and meanings as time passes. For Keanu, this realization brought a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. He realized that love isn't confined to romance or marriage. It exists in countless forms, enriching lives in ways that defy definition. And for him, loving Sandra, whether as a friend, a confidant, or something more, was enough. As Keanu entered his 60s, he made a conscious effort to embrace the present moment, just as Sandra had taught him. He threw himself into his passions, acting, motorcycles, music, and surrounded himself with people who brought joy into his life. He also stayed connected with Sandra, sending her thoughtful messages or checking in whenever he knew she was going through a tough time. Though their lives were busy and often pulled them in different directions, they remained anchors for each other, steadfast and reliable. Their friendship was a reminder that love doesn't have to fit neatly into societal expectations. It can exist in the spaces between words, in the quiet understanding that transcends explanation. Looking ahead, Keanu didn't know what the future held for him and Sandra. Perhaps they would continue down the same path they had walked for decades, cherishing their connection without complicating it further. Or maybe fate had something else in store, giving them another chance to explore the depths of their feelings. Whatever happened, Keanu trusted that their bond would endure. After all, true love isn't bound by labels or timelines. It exists in the spaces between words, in the quiet understanding that transcends explanation. And for Keanu, loving Sandra, whether as a friend, a confidant, or something more, was enough. In interviews, Keanu continued to speak openly about Sandra, acknowledging her impact on his life without hesitation. He described her as one of the most important people in his world, someone who had shaped him in ways he couldn't fully articulate. "She's extraordinary," he said repeatedly, his voice tinged with emotion. It was clear that his admiration for her went beyond mere friendship. It bordered on reverence. Fans noticed this too, drawn to the sincerity in his words and the depth of his feelings. His vulnerability resonated with audiences, reminding them that even the toughest exteriors hide tender hearts. Though Keanu accepted that he and Sandra would likely never be more than friends, He refused to let regret overshadow the beauty of what they had. He chose instead to focus on gratitude for the laughter they had shared, the support they had given each other, and the unwavering loyalty that defined their bond. Love, he realized, isn't always about grand gestures or fairy tale endings. Sometimes it's about showing up consistently, staying true through life's ups and downs, and holding on to the people who matter most, even if it means loving them from afar. As Keanu sat on his porch that evening, he felt a deep sense of contentment. The sun had set completely now, leaving behind a sky dotted with stars. He thought about Sandra, about the laughter they had shared, the quiet moments they had treasured. Though their story hadn't unfolded the way he once dreamed it might, he was grateful for every chapter they had written together. Love, he realized, isn't confined to romance or marriage. It exists in countless forms, enriching lives in ways that defy definition. And for Keanu, loving Sandra, whether as a friend, a confidant, or something more, was enough.